been big supporters of Beer Maven from the start, so we love partnering with them. If you need bathrooms, they're just kind of right around the corner over there behind where you checked in. Feel free to use that restroom whenever you need. And then, so the way we'll kind of do our rundown here today is similar to the way we've done the Beer Maven class before. So we'll spend the first kind of half hour just chatting and learning, and then we'll dive into the tasting. We have 6 different beers to taste today, and so I'm really excited about that. And then we should wrap up right around 8, maybe a little after, and then we'll have some time. We can hang out here until 9. So any of the beers that are left over, you're welcome to grab, or if you'd like to switch over to cocktails, you can start a tab at the bar and grab a cocktail if you'd like when we're all done. So we'll have some time to hang out. And now to our guests. So I think I mentioned before maybe that I don't have like a very broad background in science. So sometimes the sciencey part of beer takes me a very long time to learn. So I brought in some experts today. So first I've got Hannah Turner. She is from MSU, from the Malt Quality Lab. Great, the Malt Quality Lab. So we're really excited to have her. And then Carl DeYoung, who owns Gallatin Valley Malt, is here today as well. He's going to share his knowledge. So let's give him a big hand for being here today. So today's class focusing on malt. I know before I kind of got into beer, all that I knew about malt was that like malt powder and like, you know, malted milkshakes or malted milk balls, that's all that I thought of. So we're going to learn that malt is more than just whoppers. Malt is definitely sort of like an underrated star in beer. I think that, especially with the IPA craze, like hops get the spotlight a lot. And malt is really like the workhorse in beer. Malt is responsible not just for the color, but for the body of the beer, the alcohol content, and for a ton of flavor in beer as well. And I feel like it can be kind of tricky because it's sort of this nebulous thing that we just sort of know less about. You know, you kind of know like, oh, I like really hoppy beers, or I don't like really hoppy beers. But when people ask like, oh, do you like malty beers? It's kind of I don't really know what that means. So we're going to dive into that today. Carl is going to kick us off just talking about the barley growing process and the malting process. So we are excited to learn from him. I will turn it over. Carl.
someone in the malt house today who was a farmer and who said to me, I went to a brewery and I tried to sell them my barley, but they wouldn't buy it from me. And I didn't know why they wouldn't buy it from me. And hence starts the discussion of saying brewers use malt and not barley. And there is a difference there. And most people don't understand that. I brought some props along because I think we can relate to grocery shopping. I helped my wife out in some degree. But anyway, so in this bag, in these bags, and I picked brown bags because it looks kind of like barley. But in this bag is a can of beans, Jell-O, and some chocolate chips because I like chocolate. But in that bag, those things are packaged in packages, and just like a kernel of barley has resources inside of it, energy stored up, and it's stored up in the form of starch. Just like in this bag, a brewer says, I want to use that, but what I need in there is tied up in the can of beans, it's tied up in the box of Jell-O, and it's tied up in the bag of chocolate chips. I need that unpackaged in there in order for me as a brewer, I'm not a brewer, but anyway, as a brewer, they need that unpackaged inside there so that they can get at the ingredients to use it in a brewing process. So hence myself as a maltster, my job is to take that kernel of barley or wheat or whatever grain it may be and unpackage it inside the kernel so that what the brewer wants is available to them to use in a brewing process. I hope that kind of gives you a sense that we can relate to. So again, a brewer can't use the raw grain because it's all tied up. The resources and energy is all tied up and wrapped up in there in a form they can't use easily. So hence, as a maltster, again, we unpackage that inside of there. I thought I'd just walk you through the process of what we do in order to make that happen. In a sense, what we're really trying to do is get the grain to do what it would naturally do, and that's grow. Start that process. Because the grain already has a plan, it knows what it needs to do again, we're looking at a roughly 5-day process here. We've done that. It's growing rootlets, which is the first thing a colonel would do in the field to start to set roots down. If we just let it in there, it would become this giant root-bound mass that you might see when you pull a potted plant out. You see that. We'd never get it out of here, and it would just be a disaster. So anyway, we introduce an agitation to help separate those rootlets and keep a nice free-flowing air so we can keep it the temperature we want. Sorry, this will be the next thing. But anyway, so after a 5-day process, we've basically unpackaged everything in here that we needed to do inside that bag. But we've got all this moisture left over it that we need to get rid of. And so from there, we move it into what we call our kiln. And essentially, we're introducing warm air and a lot of air movement to dry it down. So we're basically getting rid of half of its weight at this point in water, getting rid of it because it's not storable with that amount of water, and brewers don't want the water because they don't want to pay for it. So we're getting rid of that water primarily. So we're bringing it down from about 42% moisture all the way down to about 4.5% moisture. And then in the kiln is my opinion, is where we can do the most things that most of us would understand would be flavor, color, all of those sorts of things. And just like in cooking, if we simply put our steak on the grill at 100 degrees, not much would happen to it. But if we turn up the heat, we can do a lot. And there are other ways we can do it. We can introduce color in there, depending on how we manage the moisture in there. We can introduce some deep malty flavors, a lot of those things happen in the kiln, and hence a lot of effort is putting into the kiln as well as how it mechanically works, and watching it, babysitting and all of that, because we really want that to come out well in the end. So anyway, we've gone through that process, and I'm simplifying it immensely from that sense, but during that process, it's grown rootlets, and brewers don't want the rootlets because there's a lot of nasty tasting things in the rootlets. So we need to separate those. We do it through a cleaning process. I'm going to see if I can. I just happen to have a video of this. I thought I'd try to. Maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. But the gist of it is we need to get rid of the rootlets, and we do it through an agitation process. We agitate that grain, and then we run it through a cleaning process and separate that. And then we end up with a malt, which the brewer can use at that. It's a little noisy. Sorry, wasn't expecting. This is our agitator that's separating those rootlets. Moving up into the cleaner, that's separating all of those fines from malt. This is the cleaner here that's making that happen. See the grain all the way through here now.
Do they still feel like hard shells when it's going through there?
Say again.
Like a hard shell? People feel like that?
So yes, think I've tried to put it in terms I think we could understand. We've got this energy stored up that's trapped in a form that a brewer can't use. And as a maltster, we need to unpackage that. And again, there's just a whole array of areas we can go to create all kinds of different malts within that process. So anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to share a bit with the process with that. And I'll let Hannah take over on some details.
So my name is Hannah Turner, and I manage the Malt Quality Lab for Montana State University. Our main function is helping the breeding program. So barley has been grown in Montana for many, many years now, and we've got a pretty well-established program. And some of the things that we can take away for pride in our state, we like beer, and we've got, quite a few breweries here. But if you think about malt, we grow, as Carl said, some of the best malting barley in the entire country. And if you look at barley, how that's grown around our country, we're one of the largest producers of barley here in Montana. Some of the best malting barley specifically. So our breeding program looks at all kinds of different traits, and over a 10 to 12 year process, we make crosses with things that we think are going to be useful or of interest to the malting and brewing industry towards the end, and go through that process to produce good varieties for growers like Carl to grow. Then we get into that malting process, and so Carl's talking about taking something that evolutionarily plants want to have energy stored within this little kernel so that it can have energy storage to start its life with. And so the malting process is basically taking that growth process, introducing moisture, convincing the grain, okay, it's spring rain conditions, there's ample moisture, it's time for me to start growing. And so it goes into that germination process and starts to convert. What you would like to do is convert the starches that are stored within that grain and produce sugars and energy so that it can grow into a plant. And so over that 4 to 5 day process that Carl's talking about, we start that, and then when he goes into the kiln, it's basically pausing that process, drying down that moisture and getting it so that the malt is in a preserved state. And a lot of you have little cups on your table. We should get, could you guys maybe get 2 more cups of the malt to bring over here? So you actually have described for worts. So basically, just so sweet, sour, bitter are kind of the main flavors that you're going to directly get out of it. And then the final aspect is looking at the mouthfeel. Looking at the mouthfeel and what the body is that particular wort is going to contribute. So between these two different worts that you guys have here, you can kind of compare and contrast what that might add to your final beer. On top of looking at this base malt, these two options that you have here, the brewer could additionally look at some of the stronger color and flavor malts that you might also add into the beer. They would come in smaller proportion because the intensity of the flavor that you get off of those, where this base malt is going to produce a lot of the enzymatic potential that's important for the brewing process in that conversion of starches to sugars. What do you guys think of these words?
Yeah, so this is sort of just like tea, basically, right?
Yeah,
like making
yeah.
tea out of the grains. And so you can compare, you've got the actual grain at your table as well for both of these.
Yep.
So the cups are labeled Maris Otter and then Pale Ale. And we just gave you the Maris Otter and Pale Ale teas. So you can kind of start to pick out those flavors that you might be recognizing later as you taste some of the beers that are coming from the malt, the malt specific flavors.
Does it taste like beer? Does it, yeah, it's very different. It's very much early in the process of brewing, but really how process. Do you generally like, do you not like? What do you guys think about?
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
On the is based on what they want out of malt and the characteristics that they know that certain malts have. Whether that's a certain malt type or even a specific malt company that they know produces a malt that they want to use. So as they're building that recipe, they're building what's called the grain bill. So they're kind of deciding the malts that they want to use. And I know Hannah mentioned base malts, which are like the two, Maris Otter and pale malt are frequently used as base malt. And that's like the base of your beer. Even with a beer like a porter or a stout, you might only have as much as 15% that's like a very dark roasted malt. So base malts really are the base of beers. And so Carl's going to talk for just a second about that roasting process, just because we do have some beers we're going to taste today that do have some of those like richly dark roasted malts in them.
So again, if you can picture that making of a beer has a bunch of ingredients in it. And within that, we've got some base malts on the table there, which might make up all or 40% of the recipe to make this beer. I brought along some other malts that we didn't put out just logistically because there's just too much on the table. But I've got them in bags and they're labeled over there, and they would start to delve into the area what we would call specialty malts, which really concentrate some flavors and some aspects of what brewers are looking to do to bring out some of those other aspects. The most notable one, I think, is color. So if you're looking for that really dark, stout, coffee flavored beer, we've got to introduce some really dark colors. And in order to do that, we can take malt or raw grain and we can roast those beyond the temperatures of what our malting kiln is capable, and more into the realm of like a coffee roaster would be. So we're getting up into the 400 or 500 degrees temperature-wise for a relatively short 20 minutes, let's say, where we can bring a grain from a neutral color like you saw on the table there to something that looks more like coffee. And we've got some of that over there. But again, what we're doing is we're taking those starches and what little sugars, complex sugars that are in there, and we're introducing what we would call a Maillard reaction and really darkening those primarily is what we do. So again, there's a lot of nuances in there. Moisture plays a role for different flavor profiles as well. And ultimately, heat is probably the biggest source of what changes that. And like we can attribute to say, I started out with a nice pancake in the pan, and then my phone rang, and I walked away, and I came back, and I got this black cookie in my pan. We're doing the same thing, but we're being intentional. Rather than a text or a phone call. But anyway, so again, those nuances are things that brewers are looking for. And as a maltster, it can be extremely frustrating because the steps they want them in are like so close together and overlap. And it can be difficult sometimes to, just like all brewers, I would portray as artists, using multiple colors to paint to create a beer with. What you call robin egg blue, I call sky blue. Those things overlap a lot. So as a maltster, it's rather difficult to hit some of those areas. But again, there's a table over there with the workhorse.
Yeah.
It has the enzymes, it has all of that. And that's what's unique about barley versus other grains, is barley inherently has all these enzymes in there that make it part of what brewing is about.
Have you heard the term no barley, no beer? Barley is the
Exactly.
workhorse.
You couldn't, there's always exceptions to the rule, but oats don't have that enzyme package in it. They can bring some unique things to making a beer, like that thickness to a beer you might feel on your mouth. Oats bring that into there as well. So other grains bring some things, some nuances into a beer, but primarily barley is the workhorse that does it.
So how many like flavors could a brewery purchase from you? Like how many varieties? What do you call it? A malted variety?
So some of the malt styles might be something to do.
Malt style,
I
yeah.
currently do with barley, I currently do 4 malt styles within a malt. And then when we move into a roast, I have 4 roast things as well.
Okay.
And that's simply a logistics thing for me currently,
Yeah.
just because packaging all of those things, keeping track of all marketing, all of those things, gets to be very complex.
I know Cindy gave Carl a round of applause, but I want to make sure we give Hannah a nice round of applause. So we're going to jump into the beer tasting portion. And we're going to be, as we're tasting beers, we're going to be just thinking more about the malts in the beers and those flavors. You've got great resources in front of you to kind of put words to that. I think most of you probably know, but I work at Maven, and I've been trying to get my staff to really find great words to describe beers. So I'm all about these like flavor maps with lots of different words and descriptors on them. Okay.
I'm really excited.
So our first beer that we're going to dive into today is a Pilsner. So I picked Lagunitas Pils. This style is really great because it is really focused on the malt. It's going to be pretty simple in terms of yeast. Lager yeast ferments things really crisply and cleanly, so you don't get a ton of flavor from the yeast in a lager. And then with a Pilsner, a Czech style Pilsner, there might be a little bit of hop profile from it, kind of some spicy notes, but really the malt is the star of the show with a Pilsner. So that's why I wanted to start with this one. When I'm tasting beer, I think Hannah mentioned this actually, that so much of what you taste comes from smell. So I really try and spend a lot of time smelling it before I taste it. And I know that sounds so silly, but after I taste it, I find that I like what I'm getting out of it changes a little bit. We have these nice big glasses this time, so you can give it a swirl, agitate it, get that CO2 activated. Another thing that you can do is cover it while you swirl it, and then I don't know, go in the cave, stick your nose in there. I got a big old German nose, so it's real easy for me to get in there. But yeah, that's one way you can kind of activate those aromas and then kind of release them all at one time. And then use the flavor map. See what kind of stuff that you're getting out of it. I think, Carl, did I see Pilsner malt over there?
Yes.
So if you want to even go take a little pinch or a cut back to your table of Pilsner malt, so you can taste the malt next to the beer, feel free to do that. So yeah, we're going to taste this beer for a few minutes, come up with descriptions at your tables, grab some malt samples if you want to pair it, match it. And then we'll come back together in a minute and I want to hear what you discover.
This is exactly as stressful as every beer tasting I've ever, or every wine tasting I've ever done. Pilsners are all really floral. Floral? Floral. I get that.
This is malt specific.
I personally leaning a little more towards earthy than grainy, but I'm not gonna say you're wrong.
Yeah, you know, everybody's palate is different. Yeah.
I feel fair to mention that.
Oh, that's not bad beer.
They were so spicy, and I can see a little bit of that. Opinions? Just here to try beer? Yeah. Alright. I think it's kind of pretty. I'm gonna add to my sticker collection. I need to request a brew fest off. It's a lot of fun. I figured it would be.
Some websites, like, earlier, they have other milk systems.
I have a picture of like me and Malcolm from the last 2 years coming together. And 2 years ago, we were wearing short sleeves. And last year, we were wearing hats and coats. There was so much snow. So cool. I think this tastes really medicinal. Alright. Wow. That barley tastes exactly as bad as I thought it would. I don't hate it. I'm a liquor girl. Huh? Liquor or wine. I like liquor and wine more. I mean, I don't hate it, but I wouldn't eat it. You know? Tina texted me and he's like, I saw you was across the street, cat bad at 32. Taking a class, married. said if they'll let you have it, you probably would. It's like open door shit. Fuck you, I'll work 3 days.
Like, you guys should really read this beer. It's more like
It's like, hey, man. I made really good tips this weekend, so I put it all on my credit card. indicators on yours?
Right now, I said citrus apple, grassy, lemon zesty.
Oh, here's the left side of the graph.
I like it.
I was thinking more floral.
Floral, yeah, I feel like floral today.
Yeah. Clover, dandelion.
I like clover.
I like it. I really like the That's the cigarettes. That's where I'm at too. Also that.
Perfect. Thanks, Rhonda.
Yeah. Definitely summertime.
I can definitely see the malt in it now, though, more so than before I first knew.
Another thing that I like to do is, as I take like one sip and think just about malt, and then, I look for the flavors that are like on the sheet, and then I'll take another sip and think just about hops, like what kind of hop flavors am I getting? So I'm trying to think about it all at once. It's like too much. So if I isolate what my brain is thinking for
sweetness.
seeds along it. And so most
Metallic for sure. Taste wise. Try it up. Vanilla sweet.
Yeah. Yep, honey.
They also are a little bit more uniformly shaped,
Yeah, that's what I thought, but I actually wasn't sure. But yes, so I think wheat, if it's wheat malt, it's almost always like says wheat, roasted wheat, sweet malt.
Much more their product. There's not near as much emphasis put on the style and that sort of thing with it. It just says, it doesn't get into a whole host of flavors. It brings some unique characteristics to the food and the beer style. But it's just all commodity, if that makes sense, then much more developed styles.
one of the terms that you'll come across in brewing is all malt brewing or adjunct brewing. And so adjunct basically is kind of another word for additives. And so an adjunct brewer would be using some type of sugar form or yeast form or would also be considered an adjunct. And mainly the differential between an adjunct and a malt is that malt has the enzyme potential. It is that workhorse factor, where the other things you add in, typically they're in smaller proportion, and you're adding them so that you get things like flavor and body. So something like an oat or a wheat, you get that aspect, that flavor, the body that you get from that, and you need it in smaller proportion. And so anything that's in that adjunct category is typically going to be more, it's a wheat malt, or it's a, instead of having those categorizations, they're broken down.
All right. So for our root shoot blonde ale, you've got the pale ale on your table that you can taste. And some of you got the Pilsner. You're welcome to grab Pilsner. I think, did I see Munich over there as well? Carl brought Munich malt as well. If you want to go grab a little bit and try that, and see if you can pick any of those flavors out. So, yeah, enjoy it.
Getting or they like damp wrap.
I don't know, I get a prettiness with it. Prettiness and sweetness.
wrapping a blanket or a robe around me. And I'm like, I think I need to talk to him about that. Like, I am not comfortable. I want you to have pants on. And I know, it's an extra second. Just slide those sweatpants up your legs, boy. Yeah, you called her over there hanging out. I was like, well, I'm on left. She's like, okay. Your mother is not welcome to that house.
Rhonda, do you live here in Bozeman?
No, I don't. I live in Lakeview.
How's everybody like the blonde?
Oh, it's nice.
Interesting. I haven't had a blonde in forever.
Can you pick up any of the malt profile from the...
It was more metallic than the last one, I think is the right word. I'm not sure where that's coming from. But.
I got sweetie and fruity.
Yeah. Definitely just like
And then when you drink it, I pick up some of the hops bitterness.
Yeah, I think it like finishes a little less bitter than the Pilsner did.
Yeah.
You know, there's like, it doesn't linger as long, I guess, as the Pilsner, kind of that bitterness like hung out.
Yeah.
Lingering. Yeah.
It wasn't quite as aromatic as the Pilsner was either.
Yeah, that's true. This one definitely is more
I feel so bad that I'm cheating. I guess I'm just waiting for anyone to talk about this yet. But you still sound like an idiot.
So what, we're both from Bozeman?
No, we're over on the Livingston side.
Oceanside?
Livingston.
Oh,
We're
okay.
transplants. So are we going to work our way up from here, what do you think? Yeah, starting from the lightest end and moving to the darkest end?
I would assume.
I'm at least off tomorrow. Can't say I can do anything.
Let's keep me updated. Let me know how the schedule goes after the
All right, I want to hear about the blonde. It's kind of a funny phrase. I want to hear about the blonde. Tell me all about the blonde.
Oh, yes.
Okay. What, any malt flavors kind of sticking out in the blonde here? Honey. Honey. So that honey malt maybe was kind of prominent.
Sweetness.
That sweetness. What grass? Yeah. Did anybody like taste some of the malt? I saw some folks went and grabbed some of the Munich malt from over there and tasted that side by side, and we're definitely, that Munich malt has a little more sweetness to it. So people were kind of like matching, like, oh, that Munich malt is giving it some of that flavor. So you're welcome to go grab some more, some of the Munich malt from there. If you'd said, "Seriously, red chair?" And I was like, just because we don't have, the Bozeman beer, we have so many of their other beers that are so delicious. So anyway, that's why I call Bozeman Amber my arch nemesis beer, because I got called out for not having Bozeman Amber on tap. The story behind this, so it's really interesting. So when Todd started the Bozeman Brewing Company, this was the only beer that he brewed for the first few months. And it was the only beer that he packaged and sent out of his tap room for the first few years. So the Bozeman Amber is truly a staple. It was his response to the popularity of Fat Tire. So Fat Tire, a lot of people kind of saw that as like up and coming in the early 2000s of the craft beer industry. And so this was Todd Scott's response to that. And it stuck around. I mean, its longevity is incredible. And that is because it's an excellent beer. So the malts in this beer are pale, Vienna, Munich. So there's another chance to try that Munich if you want to go grab a little bit of that. And then C75. The C and then number malts are caramel or crystal malts. And those, the numbers have to do with kind of the color level. So I don't know exactly like how many. I know there's like C10 and C20 and C40 and there's a lot of C numbers, but that has to do with their color, correct? Right. I've got these guys for back up here. Like I said, I would say that malt is the thing that I'm working to learn the most about. The malt aspect is like a very science-based like part of brewing, and as I learn more and more about malt, I'm more and more in awe of what maltsters do and what the malt process is, because it's so nuanced and incredible. So yeah, here's our Bozeman Arch Nemesis beer. Enjoy. You should be getting some more. You should be kind of moving down the spectrum on this now, and maybe be getting some of those more caramel, toffee notes.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Earthy? Caramel one? I can't get a floral aspect too.
Yeah, I retrieved us because we don't need stuff. Let's be real. Let's be real.
Oh, malt balls.
It's like a popcorn kernel. I just not really getting the wet dog flavor of malted barley. That makes sense. I'm getting a lot less bitterness in this. I feel like the pale had it the worst. I feel like this one's stronger. This reminds me of when I used to live at your house. She lives right next to a brewery.
Oh yeah, I'd be up there every day. I used to clean this up, one bar, brew pub. You brewed your own beer. And bought, well, the doors.
Caramel.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great one. I got stone fruit or like a cereal. Grape nuts. No, you got a whole one. Yeah, doesn't it taste just like grape nuts?
Yeah, it reminds me of that.
We need that much, alright? Delicious. Yeah. Right? I would eat that.
I don't know, I'd eat this shit for a snack.
Put that in my. I'll put that in my lunch. That's it.
tastes like a pale ale. Like exactly what you expect a pale ale malt to taste This is a more neutral one. No way. This tastes like Draftworks. Like pale ale malt tastes like Draftworks. Texture too. That's just the toasted, I think. I got a big cup of this. Daddy, it's easier to get this cup. I can't wait to try some of the darker roast malts. Yeah. We should probably tip our bartenders. I know that sounds weird. But would you want to come in early for some additional event? I bet he's on salary. So glad I'm not on salary. Pay off that Stitch fixing out.
You know, it's actually not terrible.
No.
It's like 5 items for like less than $200. I don't have to come try shit on.
I mean, I was about to say, this is a thrift store. I just buy these online. I got the Stitch Fix, and I got these at Shopify. I was like, I have nothing that they match with, but they're only $7. They match pretty well. Take this bag and make it.
Are you sure? I thought it tastes like chicken.
All good for pork.
So it tastes grainy.
anybody getting any of those? Were you kind of moving down the chart into some more of the
Caramel.
other flavors? Caramel, yeah.
Yep.
Sweetness,
Maybe a little
chocolate, yeah.
a little bit of toffee.
Toffee. Was anybody getting like some toast or bread crust? Yeah. I said pizza crust. What? Pizza crust. Well, then, yeah. That's where your math got us. Yeah. Yeah, pizza crust. I thought that, I was saying this just a second ago, but I thought that Carl's analogy about the pancake was really great for thinking about moving through that spectrum, because I'm sure you've had burnt pancakes sometime in your life. I'm sure you've had perfectly done pancakes. I'm sure you've tasted the pancake batter. So that whole spectrum is actually really helpful for me. I've never thought about it that way, and thinking of like the malt along each of those, time periods and what it's contributing to beer. Thinking about it as a pancake has changed my perspective. I love it. So that's been really helpful for me, just as I'm tasting this too, thinking about various stages of pancake. Awesome. What's the verdict on the amber here?
Yeah, it's bad. Not too bad.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it too. Personal vendetta. It is, again, it's interesting for me because I do appreciate it more when I sit down and taste it and really pick apart the flavors. This is also a beer, the malt really shines in this. I definitely was not getting much in the way of hop character. I wasn't getting much, spice or fruitiness or, any kind of piney or anything. It's nice and definitely centers on malt for sure. All right, so in just a minute, we'll finish pouring
sure what.
Sounds like we're
That's how to go out for weddings. Ready for girl out to go out of style for weddings. I wouldn't really offer it any
Kind of a nutty, kind of a peach smell from it.
It's like very much gonna have to know to figure it out. That's the first thing I smell.
You know, it's like each sugar, white sugar, corn sugar, whatever.
I drink IPAs, stouts, some of your pale ales, but I like the hoppier ones.
Yeah. I like IPAs. Hoppy.
Yep. I like the hoppiness. Then in dark beers, I like the stouts, porters. If they're barrel aged, like bourbon barrel, rum barrel, tequila barrel, I like them even that much more.
There you go. What beer did you have that's tequila barrel aged?
You guys getting Maven's on over here on this one? Pam? Do you know that hoppy and marijuana are the same family?
Yep.
So you're definitely going to get a lot of crossover. People who like hoppier beers probably love it. Just kidding. But yeah, it would be a choice.
It's funny because my parents are probably they don't drink anymore.
Yeah.
Terrible to see like that.
You know, they smell anything but a lager. Really, a lager? You like the smell of Bud Light? Okay.
I really liked, so me and her used to wake up in Glacier National Park for a summer.
Yeah.
And they only did local beer. So if anyone wanted a Bud Light, they couldn't get it. They could get a, what was it? It's a Canadian. I know what it is too. Kokanee. Right? Is it Kokanee? I don't think, maybe?
What?
Yeah, it was only local stuff. Any domestic. So yeah, no domestic beer. What, 100 miles? Yeah. Hard. So like, if somebody wanted like a Bud Light, we'd get a Canadian.
We'll get lost. We don't have craft beer here.
I'm actually from St. Louis, so anytime I go home, we always go to the brewer, like do
That is local for you.
Do the tour, the Anheuser-Busch.
Yeah.
But I like to do it because you get to see the Clydesdales, and you get free beer at the end.
That sounds nice.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun.
But Budweiser is owned by InBev. InBev is a big thing over Denmark. Pretty soon they'll be the only beer distributor around.
Well, not if they go by the craft breweries. And
Uh,
you know how angry hipsters are. They won't give up.
really, tell that to Stone, Goose Island.
Oh yeah, I know Goose Island.
Yeah, they sold out to
Yeah.
Yes, they sold out to InBev.
Well, yeah, money. But
Yeah.
these smaller ones around here.
Keep it small, keep it fresh, keep it local.
And Blair can't have my Thursday shift. I want to wake up at 5 a.m. Shake your head at me. Because I don't have to be there till noon.
No, I'm gonna have to start waking up early.
Gross. Why?
There's breakfast events.
That shit. You're making more money.
Great.
I don't know, I think I just got made about the same amount of money, but I didn't have time to get my cash checks. So I made about $10,000 more this year than last year.
Okay.
But also a lot of conflict.
No, please. Ooh, swirling around, it makes it smell extra. That's not swirling. Get it together. You're better than this.
So it smells like in your backyard.
I know. Well, almost, yeah.
I used to teach elementary school, so sometimes I'm like tempted to clap when I Well, yeah, usually then you would just so my favorite was if you can hear my voice clap once, then you get some claps, and then if you can hear my voice clap twice, and then it slowly like pulls everybody. But when there's beer involved, we don't need to be clapping out tunes. Alright. space, like a group of women who could come together, learn together, feel totally comfortable asking questions and gaining that confidence that you need, because there's so many places like Sidewinders or like the tap room where these beer lists are really intimidating. There's a lot going on, and it can be hard to confidently go outside of your comfort zone. I fall into this trap too when I'm looking at the beer list. I just panic and order something that I recognize. You know, I'm like, oh, Bozo Amber. I know that one. Like, I got that. Versus being able to have the tools and the words to have a conversation with your bartender or your beer tender, male or female, and say like, I really like lighter lagers, or I really like malt-focused amber beers. What do you have that has some caramel and toffee in it? You know? I mean, those are the kinds of tools that'll make you feel really confident, so that you're not feeling like what you're doing is wrong. Right. So that you're like, oh, your customer tastes like pizza. I also think for anyone who works in the industry, I think that's the kind of genuine things that are are valid and endearing, and honestly, it's so weird. Sometimes when I drink this, I get like a little pizza crust, but in a really awesome way. Right now, I love pizza. Yeah. Like I'm gonna go home and get pizza tonight, or like buy a 6-pack of this because you're gonna want it with your pizza later. You know, whatever it is.
That's what I'm playing.
I think if you can take what you're getting out of it and own it and be confident in it, so don't think that you're wrong, just be like, this is what I get, and that's right. So there you go. Okay. Soapbox. All right, let's know.
I needed that.
Okay, so we're moving into our last couple beers for the night, so we're going into some dark beer territory. So I picked this new Belgian beer called 1554, and the reason that I picked this, and I do this frequently, so for those of you who have been to other beer classes of mine, this is a lager, and I think there's a misconception frequently, especially around for new beer drinkers, that lagers are light. So at the brewery, I'll get, it frequently happens with men that are like 50 to 70, they're like, I want a lager. I think in their head they just want a light, crisp beer. They want something like Budweiser or worse. So they think that that's lager. But lager has to do with the yeast. And there's lots of different types of lagers. So just like Carl and Hannah were talking about, malt is what's giving beer its color. Yeast is what's making it an ale or a lager. So if you use lager yeast, but you use dark malts, you're going to get a dark beer that's a lager. So this is a lager, so it's going to have that same crisp, clean finish. So think back to the way that Pils finished, and you should that should be reminiscent when you're drinking this beer. It should finish kind of crisp, clean, but you're going to sort of get flavors that you would get out of a porter. You're going to get that kind of rich, roasty, so move all the way down. Kind of on the spectrum there to sort of those roasty. Let's go back to our pancake, because I really like that analogy right now. Go all the way towards the burnt pancake and what you're going to be getting. I believe that Carl brought some darker malts as well, so you can check out some of those roast malts and see if you want to. Those ones are sometimes slightly less pleasant to eat because they are more bitter. So if you go I know a lot of people have been snacking on malts, but be careful with those dark malts.
Yeah.
So this should be another showcase, really, of those dark malts. And I'm excited to see what kind of flavors we get out of this.
Yeah. Roasted malt.
Straight up chocolate. I drank so much of this shit right after drinking one.
Yeah, chocolate.
Warm in a backpack. Really? Oh, so much better cold.
Roasty.
Roasty.
What are you getting?
I know, right? Look right.
Turkey food and malt sauce? When are we having that one?
But I would go to it.
I mean, I might as well learn more usage of relations.
Right?
I love this shit.
Just listen. Now you use the word hurry all the time.
Sure.
Okay, deal.
Bye. Can I tell you when the next class was?
Okay, here's a little chocolate malt to try.
Yes.
Like really old baking chocolate.
Yeah. Really old. Yeah. It's like burnt coffee.
I'm not getting the coffee. I am getting the chocolate out of it. Oh, actually, that sounds like a lot of fun. Here. I mean, it sounds great. I love pairing stuff. Yeah, I need to make myself do things. That's fair. Want to go? You going to the next one, Sarah?
Yes.
All right.
When is it?
Next month.
Next month is their beer and food pairing.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, where I work with food and beer at work, I like to, some pairing. Right, maybe some romance.
if only he would be so lucky
I deleted mine. I still have the app. Like, definitely got the chocolate.
Chocolate, coffee, burnt toast.
I think
I see it.
Haven't seen like Rocky Road ice cream. Dark chocolate, marshmallow, cherry, vanilla.
Rocky Road ice cream. I like that. That got a lot of nods from across the room.
It made me like it more.
Yeah, so maybe I like that you got some of the cherry out of that. Maybe some dark fruit flavor. Yeah, right. That lager finish, right? So something that if you were to just look at that beer, you wouldn't necessarily expect that crispy, clean finish. But then you drink it and you're like, oh wow, it is like it's almost refreshing, which you don't expect from a darker beer like this. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so our last beer tonight, we're gonna launch into Bozeman Brewing's Plum Street Porter. This is one of my
Yes,
favorite beers.
yes.
Actually, it's actually won a ton of awards for them. I think it is their most award-winning beer. So this one has pale, Munich. We're going back to that C75, brown malt and chocolate malt. So it does have a lot of those darker malts in it to make it nice and rich. But again, I mentioned this earlier, the pale malt is going to be probably 70–80% of all of the malt is pale malt in this recipe. The amount of chocolate malt in that is going to be very small, less than 5% of the malt that goes in that, and it makes it dark and rich like a porter. So we're not going to come back together after this beer, so I'm just going to take a second and wrap up a little bit. I would love to give Carl and Hannah one more awesome round of applause. For supplying malt and their expertise and really filling in a ton of gaps where I am seriously lacking. I very much learned alongside of you all today and got a great new analogy about pancakes that I'm very excited about. You also probably noticed this lovely lady handing out beer tonight. So this is Kelsey. She actually joined Jesse and I as our intern. So let's give Kelsey a big round of applause. We're really excited to have her help and just with craft beer week and with everything that we do. So, and then of course, let's give a big round of applause to not just Brock but also to Kitty Warren for their very generous. So after you finish this, or as you drink your last beer, feel free, there are leftovers, like full cans and bottles of what we had, and you are welcome to get one of those at no charge if you'd like to sip one, and you're also welcome to grab a cocktail if you'd like to switch it up a little bit. Brock will be making cocktails, and you can start a chat with him to make those. The next Beer Maven is during spring break, and I'm so sorry to realize that it's exactly a month from right now, so it's March 19th, and that one is going to be, it's big beers, so we're going to be doing like imperial beers. We're only doing 5 instead of 6, but you might want to plan on an Uber anyway. And we're going to be doing small this Saturday from 10 to 4. And it's up on, kind of as you head out of town on Main, it's in the Treat Building. So that little
Cafe.
it's like across from the little gas station there up at the Highland and Main intersection. So stop by for the grand opening and all the lovely, she's got an amazing selection. So if you're interested in home brewing, you can swing by and check out what they've got. And yeah.
We're doing a demo with a Robo Brew, and then we're doing raffles on the hours. So a lot of local breweries, and then is he still here? Carl is donating a bag of malts for that. So
Yeah.
hey guys.
All right. If you did anything, please come see me.
It smells like cleaning sweat. Burnt candle. Like cleaning supplies and burnt candle, like you just cleaned your house and you blew the candles out of it, you have to go to work. Very specific about that.
It's like, you can't unknow things. I was like, oops. I won't call you.
Are you gonna drink your wort? Don't shake your head at me, man. It's a wonder you made it right. I didn't. Set my alarm for now. Kind of sad that they didn't do the shifts that I actually wanted. The shifts that you wanted, you're upset about that? Yeah. I wanted to be angry. No, not this one. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Well,
It is really interesting just how different the experience
I don't think
is.
they realize though, because the schedules overlap. Doing Wednesday and Thursday is taxing. It's a lot. That's
Yeah, there was the beer maven. Yeah, so there was beer maven, beer craft